Heyo everybody, it's Freeloader here and welcome to my first Skybound Odyssey card rating video for the Axiom faction. I think these will be a particularly hard challenge this time around as all of these cards exist in a new context, which is the context of new heroes existing. And I will be rating the new Axiom hero at the end of the video as well, so stay tuned for that. For now, you guys know the drill. Ratings go from 1 stars to 5 stars, 1 being completely unplayable and 5 being meta defining. And this is of course in regards to the competitive format of Altered. And so without further ado, let's get on into it. The first card we're going to take a look at is Isaree and Pebble. This is the new hero card for the Axiom faction, and this hero is all about landmarks and these Aerolith tokens. These Aerolith tokens are token landmarks where if you sacrifice them you get to resupply, and this does also apply at night if you have to sacrifice them because you have too many landmarks in play, so more than 2. I'm not going to rate this hero quite yet, but it's just nice to be aware of this existing because a lot of the new cards are designed with this hero in mind. So now let's get on into the first card, which is Gavroche. This card is pretty alright. It's a nice cheap drop from hand. I think from reserve making the Aerolith, it's kind of comparable to a resupply, but I think it's actually slightly worse. I think in most cases you'd prefer an immediate resupply. Of course there are specific synergies with this, so it is a bit hard to evaluate. I do believe though, if you're running an Aerolith synergy deck, that Gavroche might just be able to squeak in there and song quite nicely as a 1-cost option. So I think I'm going to give both the common and rare a 3-star rating. Moving on, we're going to have Demolition Expert. Demolition Expert is a bit understated for where I would like to see it. Just having that 0 stat really hurts if you're going into Sigismar, for example. So I think that is a bit of a downside. It is nice to just have a sacrifice outlet from reserve. Even that, sometimes you're going to have a landmark out you don't want to sacrifice and you won't have the extra Aerolith out. And for being that conditional and it not being, it's a worse rate than the 2-cost 2/2/2, I think Demolition Expert is just a bit too weak. At rare, it does get slightly better. Notably as well, as a rare, you can choose in what players landmarks the Aerolith goes, so for multiplayer, that is a consideration. From reserve, it gets a boost, and it also has that 1 extra water stat, which I think actually are the main weaknesses that this card has at common. It's a May sacrifice, it has the extra water stat, and now beats the Ordis Recruit token quite cleanly. It's now better stats. So at rare, I actually feel like, although the card is better, you now have to give up the rare slot for it. I don't know. I think it's still going to be around 3 stars at common, 2 stars at rare. Bessie Coleman is a interesting card. This one I like a lot more than the Demolition Expert. It is at a baseline just a 2-cost 2/2/2, which is fine, but quite often, especially for Isaree and Pebble, you will just have this be a 2-cost 3/3/3 because you will find a way to sacrifice a permanent, and that's going to make this a very well statted card at common. At rare, it has the potential to even grow to a 4/4/4, but notably you do need to sacrifice 2 permanents if you want to achieve that. I think that's just, you're running a rare slot to make your own life harder to potentially get a bit of an upside. I don't think that's worth it. I think this card is all about the common. The common is going to get a 4-star rating, and the rare is going to get a 2-star rating. Next up is FarFetch 2.0. This card is interesting as well. It has quite alright stats, and the sacrifice a permanent if you do target character switches expedition. That hooked effect is of course very, very good for trading expeditions. Still, I think at common you're running into some risks versus removal, or if your opponent just slow plays your hooked effect, so to say, you might not be able to hit the thing you actually need to hit in order to guarantee that trade of expeditions. It's also only good if you can get ahead on expeditions early, which currently we are still in a pretty aggressive meta, so unless there's a meta change, it's going to be hard to get ahead of expeditions against stuff like Sigismar and Kojo. I don't 100% see this card. At rare, I do think it actually does get, again, significantly better with slightly better stat to cost ratio, as well as just a cheaper cost. Those are two things you love to see. I am giving FarFetch still though just a 2-star both at common and rare, because I think with Hooked existing, you're always putting your rare slots there, and I don't think you need the common FarFetch effect. Next up is Paju, Axiom Pilot. This is again a nice clean 2-cost 2/2/2. The only special thing about this at common is that discard ability to make an Aerolith, and I actually think this slots quite nicely into Isaree. Having a 2-cost 2/2/2 at baseline is very nice. It's a good low end of a card to be. And the flexibility in this card where if you don't want to play it from reserve but you need an Aerolith token, you can just have it. I think that is actually pretty good if you're going to play it alongside cards like Boom or Uniques that require a lot of sacrifice Aerolith tokens. So I'm going to give Paju at common a 4-star rating. And at rare, I think this card gets a lot worse just because it loses stats, and there's some potential synergy upside and the ability to make more Aeroliths, but it's all hard for how much you're already getting at baseline out of the common. So only 2 stars at rare. Next up is the Medusa. This card is, from hand, it's a bit overcosted for the stats you're getting. And from reserve, it is a full discard, a character on a common, but it's just still so overcosted. You're still going to get 2-0'd a lot when you play this. It's also, because it's from reserve, it's only really coming as a surprise if you're playing Trace. And I think Trace just has better things to do. At rare, it doesn't get much better. It's now, you know, on curve stat-wise, 3-cost 3/3/3, and you're not only giving your opponent the Aerolith token when you discard their character, you're also getting one. But I just don't think it is enough to justify the slot. Medusa is getting a 2-star common and a 1-star at rare. We have Axiom Pupeteer as well. Now this card I think looks very exciting. I think this is actually a very scary card, seeing as a 3/3/0 stat line. It's fairly easy to find an expedition where you're just going to play that as a on-stat character ratio. And the Sabotage is actually really good then. I think often the issue that, for example, in Bravos you face when you're playing the Haven Bouncer is that you're just a little bit too understated on the turn you Sabotage. So unless you are disrupting actively their game plan for that turn, you are often dropping an expedition that you otherwise wouldn't have to drop. And I think with Axiom Pupeteer you can do exactly that. At rare as well, this card is even better because it fulfills its own condition when you play it from hand, and presuming you're playing this in Isaree, you're also almost always going to fill the condition when you play it from reserve, which just makes this a 3-cost 4/4/1 Sabotage and a 2-cost 4/4/1 from reserve, which those are just both amazing. So Axiom Pupeteer is getting a 3-star common for me and a 4-star at rare. Next up we have Marie Curie. This is just a vanilla card at common, but honestly it's not too bad. It's very comparable to Mila Earhart, which is just a little bit lower risk and a little bit lower reward as well. It is significantly worse from reserve. 2-cost 3/3/2 compared to a 1-cost 2/2/2 is almost like, it's over 50% less efficient in terms of stats to cost ratio, right? And 1-cost after you is a lot better than 2-cost after you as well. So definitely, you know, I think in the Trace decks where you're really only looking to play cards like this from reserve, Marie Curie does look worse to me. But maybe in a deck that is a bit more balanced, where sometimes you will want to play this from hand, Marie Curie looks alright to me. At rare, it is 1 cheaper from hand as well, but you do need to sacrifice a permanent or she gets fleeting. This is nice flexibility, but I can't really see people using a rare slot on this card. So Marie Curie is getting a 2-star rating at common and a 2-star rating at rare as well. Then we have this Lucan Hungry Leviathan. This is a pretty exciting card. At common, it has the effect of you may discard any number of cards from your reserve to give me that many boosts. It does, of course, have Gigantic, like all other Leviathans. Meanwhile, at rare, it actually has you may sacrifice any number of permanents to give me that many boosts. I think at rare, the biggest, especially in Isaree, I think you can hope for this to be a 5-cost 5/5/5 gigantic, which is alright. Notably, I think if you're doing this on curve, then you're often going to be overloading your reserve a lot going into next turn. At common, I think you can get even bigger setups, potentially, but I'm just wondering what deck is going to be playing this, because I think in Traced, you'd rather just play cheap cards and get there that way. And at rare, you're really committing a lot of sacrificing of permanents into this card, that there's plenty of other cards that also want to sacrifice permanents. So although this card looks quite strong, I actually have some doubts for it. It's really hard to evaluate. I think they are both 2-star cards, unfortunately. I think the out of faction will be better. Alright, then we are getting into the spells. Axiom Signet at common. I think this card actually has really nice utility, and the discard target permanent hand cost 3 or less you might think is not super relevant because the Grems already exist, and why would I play this card if I can play the Grems? And the answer is if you're on something like Sierra and you don't have an easy way of getting Grems into reserve, then having this as from hand flexibility is just really nice. So I think it's actually a solid card, mostly a Sierra card in my opinion, and I think it is a 3-star card at common. At rare, choosing 2, I don't think it's too much of an upgrade, and using a rare slot is always a big deal, so I think this is only going to be 2 stars at rare. This is a spell that again synergizes with the sacrificing of permanents to make it a little bit cheaper. At rare, you can actually get a 2-cost removal out of this, but it gains that limitation, and quite a limitation, of only being able to hit characters with cost 3 or less. I don't know if this is going to be worth it. I kind of feel like it's still better to just rely on cards like Hooked to get you expedition trades and go for other strategies to get your 2-0s. It might be worth it in Isaree, but I wouldn't count on it. I think you got better things to do here, potentially. So, yeah, it's gonna get a 2-star rating both at common and rare for me. Then we have Aerolith Reef. Now this is a 2-cost removal at common already. It removes a 2 or less hand cost character, which is, you know, if we compare it to Off You Go, which was a staple for quite a long time, it is worse, and you can kind of argue that this is like a fleeting Off You Go since you only get to play it once. But you will gain access to triggering this effect with your Gibbles, with your Dr. Frankensteins and other effects like that. And I think that's going to actually be quite oppressive. It's going to be very hard to play into this when your opponent has it in play and you're playing, you know, Sigismar or Kojo, and you're just thinking about anything I play right now, they can just remove for essentially 0 cost. And I think that's going to be quite toxic. At rare, I don't think it gets much better because I actually think a lot of the value of the Aerolith Reef is that it just sits around and play. So Aerolith Reef looks really good to me. I'm giving it 4 stars at common and 2 stars at rare. Brassbug Nursery is an interesting one. I think it's a bit overcosted. It's very comparable to Brassbug Hub, which has seen very, very little play. It makes the Aerolith, so it kind of gets your resupply. It has a lot of like up and down sides. It's a bit more expensive. You always need to sacrifice a permanent to do it. You can do it later in a turn. But ultimately, I just don't think this card is powerful enough to really be much better than the Brassbug Hub. And so, yeah, at rare, I think it has that Nylum phenomenon where it gets cheaper, but it loses the Aerolith making on the arrow. And I think you kind of like having that Aerolith that comes alongside it. So I don't have too much hope for this card. I'm giving it a 2-star common and a 1-star rare. Next up is the Abandoned Depot. This card I think I'm pretty excited about, even if only it's a landmark that has an arrow draw card at common in Axiom. I think it's going to be a huge help to Subhash, who really struggles with card advantage, but with the Abandoned Depot, you know, you can throw this out there and then use your Gibbles and your Dr. Frankensteins in the future just to draw cards, and you're not going to be running out of gas nearly as much anymore. I think that's really good for the class, or specifically for Subhash. Overall, I don't think the rest of this is all too impressive. Maybe the common we'll see play in Sierra is just a way to dig to your Brassbug hive and still be a trigger on your Sierra. This card looks alright, I really like that it exists, and I am going to be giving it a 3-star at common and a 2-star at rare. Alright, then we have the Brassbug Dropship. It's quite a commitment. I think in Sierra, the common actually does have potential as a kind of free cost 6/6/6 in a way. That gets even better if you have a Brassbug hive out. But it's a bit wacky. It's delayed, you need to find a way to sacrifice this or to overload your landmark zone at the end of your turn, and then you get to start your turn with 2 Brassbugs. Again, I actually think this is pretty solid in Sierra. Outside of Sierra, I think it's pretty weak. The rare, it's cheaper, so it's you can't play it in Sierra anymore, not really. For other heroes, it's still just a bit too much resource commitment for not quite enough stats. So I think the Brassbug Dropship is a 3-star common and a 2-star rare. Then we have Restocking Station. This is currently, I'm a bit obsessed with this card. I think the common looks insane. You get to do some really interesting unique loops. You get to do some really interesting also rare loops with Ouroboros Inkcaster and Bravos Vanguard style decks. So I think this has good amounts of potential. I think the common looks a lot better than the rare to me. I don't think I'd want to spend 2 on this effect, but spending 1 mana on it as an after you, and then all that extra utility you get, I think this card's phenomenal. I'm giving it a 4-star common and a 1-star at rare. Then we have the Aerolith Quarry. This card is interesting. I think this is very comparable to Mess. The Mess in Bravos at common reads, once you've set me up, every day you get to resupply once. So kind of an at noon resupply. The Aerolith Quarry is half of that. If your opponent is first, create an Aerolith token in your landmarks, right? So you're going to get that on half of the turns. Half of a Mess is a lot worse than a full Mess. This doesn't require any setup anymore, so maybe it ends up being enough, but it also consumes a landmark slot. And I think you have other landmarks you would prefer to have in play than this. So I don't really see this going the distance. At rare, it gets more expensive. Notably, it does at rare get that when you sacrifice a permanent, you get to boost something. Up until now, all the landmarks that give you 1 boost a turn have been actually quite good. A bit of overperformers. So for the rare, I actually have slightly more hope. I'm going to give the common a 1-star and the rare a 2-star rating. Alright, that was all the in-faction cards. Now we're moving to the out-of-faction cards, starting with the Smoldering Jinn. This card is quite nice. I'm actually quite excited about this card, although it does look a little bit weak to me. And that is because this might be a Foundry card. The Axiom Bastion finally getting a little bit of support in its home faction. This is going to be really nice with the Axiom Bastion. And, you know, with the Restocking Station, with Ouroboros Inkcaster, you get to loot these kinds of effects as well, and maybe play an actual ramp deck in the Axiom faction, which is quite exciting. Still, I do think realistically, this Smoldering Jinn is a little bit on the weaker side, and outside of that niche does not have a whole lot of potential, so it's only going to be getting that 2-star rating from me. Phileas Fogg, you know, from reserve it can be a free cost 4/4/4, but it kind of comes with a downside, since Soul is not a Axiom hero, and I just don't think this card is good enough, so it's getting a 1-star rating. We have Wingsuit Jumper, which I actually quite like, I think. I'm not quite sure about this card. It's very slightly understated, but you just love to see draw a card on any card. I don't think there's really a hero that abuses this enough. I think Subhash is going to enjoy this card, but even there, you're not really playing this till day 3 earliest. And with that rush, you do lose out on kind of the potential to 2-0, since you're going to be committing your resources a lot earlier. So I think it's also only a 2-star card, unfortunately. Priya, Bravo Signaler. This one I like. I really like they have just a very solid 4-cost character with tough 1, right? It's very nice stats. It has a little upside if you win your expedition. And I think this is just solid. I think I'm giving it 3 star. I don't think it's super synergistic with anything, but it's just nice. It's just a solid card. Next up we have a Beowulf. This one is interesting. I think particularly in Sierra, one thing you can keep in mind is that if you don't activate your Sierra hero ability and you play a Beowulf, you will get to activate your Sierra after expeditions have moved forward, or after cards have already reset or gone through their cleanup stage, so you get to start your next turn with a Brassbug, which is nice. I don't know if it's going to be worth a rare slot. It's honestly really hard to say, but I think there's certainly potential with this card, so I'm going to give it that 2-star rating. Flying Dockyard, I think rewards you for doing something that is bad in the faction, and I think because of that reason, it's also a bad card. Again, it's a rare slot that's worse than common Mess in Bravos. Now, Mess is a solid card, but yeah, I don't see it using a rare slot on this. Flying Dockyard is a 1-star card. Mountain Nymph. This one is interesting. It has the ability to make Aeroliths, and Axiom is the faction that does care about this. I think the stats are still too single-minded on this card, especially since you don't really have a way of making a mountain-only expedition in Axiom. So unless Nadir is really, really meta, I think Mountain Nymph is gonna not be very playable. I'm still giving it 2 stars, maybe with a little bit of hope, but yeah, don't think too much of this card. Lyra Signet is a really interesting one. I think these effects are all really strong that are on here, but it is a spell, and I feel like Axiom struggles a bit making good use out of spells. Giving 2 characters fleeting isn't really what Axiom is about. Maybe that's going to change a bit in the future, but yeah, I don't know. I'm very mixed on this card, because the effects are all really strong, but I also think the card overall is a little bit on the unsynergistic side in Axiom. So unfortunately, it is also only getting a 2-star rating from me. The Opera House is a 2-cost landmark that is a bit odd because it is a spell support landmark that also supports permanence a little bit, but I just don't think there's a deck for this, and I kind of don't think there will be for quite a while. So the Opera House is just getting 1-star rating from me. Puff's Challenge is a cool new removal spell. It does go well with all the after use that Axiom has access to, especially in Trace. And a lot of the time in the mid to late game, this will only cost 2, at which point it's a pretty solid removal option that I think might actually see an occasional bit of play. Still don't think it's a mainstay card, so it's somewhere in that 2-star to 3-star rating for me. It's very hard to decide, but I'm going to give it that 2-star, because I just don't think it quite gets there, and with the Aerolith Reef coming out as well this set, I think this removal option will get a little bit overshadowed. Then we have Bluecap. Now Bluecap is, I think, just weak, because it's not really what you want to do in the Axiom faction. We haven't really seen this effect yet, and at a rare, a 2-cost 2/2/2 is pretty below rate, and then the upside of this effect is just very minor. You have way more consistent ways of making Aeroliths that don't require you to restrict yourself and play into a losing expedition. So I don't really see it for Bluecap, and I'm only going to give it a 1-star rating. The Undine, I think, is neat, but also a little bit on the weaker side. The only reason I'm giving it 2 stars is because this has potential. It's the first discard effect in Axiom that can remove fleeting from spells, and that might be worth something with some deck. There are some neat spells in the Axiom faction, but not all that many. So, I don't know, I don't 100% see it, but I like the new access to this effect in Axiom, so it's getting 2 stars. Winged Monkey, I don't know how to place this. It feels a little bit understated for what it is, but also very cleanly makes an Aerolith token. I don't know. I don't really imagine you're going to be using a rare slot on this in most decks. I think you have other ways of making Aerolith tokens that are relatively cheaper. So yeah, I don't know. I don't 100% see it for the card. One cost after you from reserve though, 020, is quite nice. I'm giving it 2 stars. Could definitely be a 3-star card as well though. Studious Acolyte. I don't think there's a lot of ways to multi-proc this on a turn in Axiom consistently. Like, you will have some, at some point in the game in Sierra, you would have turns where you might be able to play this plus Brassbug Hive plus Nylum maybe. But I don't think you're dedicating a rare slot to that potential, and for just using it as an after you for something like a Brassbug Hive, I think it's a bit too understated. So I'm gonna give this a 1 star. Then the Tortoise is up next. This does have the after you text on a discard ability, but is also pretty understated beyond that. I don't 100% see it. I don't think this discard ability is worth it in the Axiom faction. I think you'd always rather play Axiom Salvager, which is just cheaper, better stat ratio. It's also an after you, but comes with a resupply, but it costs 1. I don't know. I don't see it for the Tortoise. It is getting a 1-star rating. Kali, I do like this card a little bit just because it has utility in how you want to play it. And I think it's also just overstat enough that that utility actually has potential. I actually kind of like Kali. I'm going to give it a 2-star rating. Don't think it's exceptional, but it might see its play here and there. Alelo, Eerie Leviathan, is again a gigantic character, and it has a really interesting effect, but I don't think there's all that much synergy with this effect until you get to uniques. So I think Alelo is a card designed for its uniques, and unfortunately I don't think the out of faction is very strong, so it's getting a 1-star rating. Watch out for the Alelo uniques. Finally, this brings us back to the starting point of Isaree. Is Isaree going to be a strong hero? She is sure coming with a lot of support, and I think, you know, there's a lot of potential to go off here as well. We have old cards like Boom that will play strongly in this hero. And we have a lot of new cards, new ways to make Aeroliths, new ways to sacrifice landmarks. We have old Armored Jammer as well, which is going to slot very, very nicely into this deck. I think Isaree is going to be very solid. I'm giving her a 4-star rating. Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the Skybound Odyssey Axiom cards, and I can't wait to get my hands on these cards, get some games in there, and just see how wrong I am. And yeah, hopefully I'll be seeing you guys all on BGA and playing some games. Best of fortune to you, and until next time, farewell.